Welcome back to the Growth Over Goals podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Montgomery. Today, I'm with a dear friend who I've gotten to know fairly well over the past year. His name is Tom Patterson. Some of you know Tom's story, some of you don't. He's married to his wife, Erin. They have two beautiful children. Lives in the great metropolis of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Although his journey has taken him all over the country. Tom and Erin are actually the founders of Tommy John. They've grown a really impressive company. They've done just some really important work. It goes way beyond the retail clothing. It goes way beyond the brand. Tom and Erin are believers. They're deeply involved in many circles. In fact, Tom and I have gotten to know each other at a couple of events, Maxwell Leadership event in Orlando. We get to spend some time together. But I want you to know this about Tom as we step into today's conversation. Tom Patterson was included in Crain's New York Business Magazine's 40 under 40 list, which is a huge deal to be considered one of the top business leaders under the age of 40 by Crain, and then was also named EY's Entrepreneur of the Year for New York retail. And so, man, for somebody that's got a business headquartered in New York, lives in Sioux Falls, has lived in San Diego and just all over the country, he's got a really interesting story. He's going to share some of that with us today. But more importantly, just a good heart, a ton of wisdom. Tom Patterson, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jordan. Man, it's an honor to be on your show. I feel really small compared to the guests that you have. And I've learned so much from just being an avid listener to your podcast. And it's one thing to listen, but to get to know you as a person, you just have an incredible platform. And my goal today, honestly, you're a friend, I want to support you, but if I can inspire one person that's listening, struggling with their business, has an idea, and they don't know how to get it into action, that's a success for me. So honored to be here.
Well, listen, man, this might be the first time I can ever say this. There's at least one person listening, maybe multiple people listening, who are being inspired while wearing the underwear that you created. So if you're wearing some Tommy John underwear, and you're listening to the Tommy John and being inspired, that's a unique opportunity. That's a unique situation. But literally the Tommy John brand has exploded, Tom. And I want to start there just with like the story, the entrepreneurial story, because we have so many entrepreneurs and business leaders who are listening. One thing I love that you do is you give Erin so much credit, like right off the bat. You're like, hey, look, she's been equally as involved. Like, she's the heartbeat behind this thing. Like, I love how you just include her. It's Erin and Tom, even though the company's called Tommy John. I think people are quick to talk about Tom Patterson, but you're like, no, you got to know about Erin. Anyway, tell us about the Tom and Erin story and take us back to the early days of where Tommy John got started.
Sure. I'll give you the notes. So anybody that's known me since I was a kid still calls me Tommy. And middle name's John. I've not had elbow surgery. I'm not related to the baseball pitcher, but that's how we landed on the name Tommy John. And back in 2007, Erin had started this company called Organic Head, selling organic household cleaners, skincare products. And I saw her build a website, get pricing, buy product, build a wholesale business, and launch it online. And I was really inspired just by her courage to do that. And I thought, what's my idea going to be? Do something. And I grew up in a small town in South Dakota, Milbank, South Dakota, 3,000 people. But I grew up snow blowing, shoveling sidewalks before school, had a lawn mowing business in the summer. I would mow lawns into the fall after football practice. So I always worked and I was interested in the idea of business. And in 2007, you may remember this, you're younger than me, but there was a show called The Big Idea with Donnie Deutsch on MSNBC. And this is basically Shark Tank before Shark Tank. And every entrepreneur that went on the show had the same concept. They solved a problem that was personal to them because they thought, I don't like this. Maybe there's a better way to make something. So picture me, 2007, I'm selling medical devices, Will Smith in The Pursuit of Happiness, selling pulse oximeters, not bone scanners, going into hospitals. I've got my suit, I've got my fitted dress shirts, and I've got this baggy, boxy undershirts that bunch up and they come untucked and they yellow and they stretch out. And I retuck them in when I get out in and out of my car. And the light bulb went off. I thought, there's got to be a better way to make an undershirt. Like, what's the ultimate undershirt? Longer, fitted, doesn't stretch out, doesn't yellow. It stays tucked in, but it's not compression. It's not a man girdle, but it's comfortable to wear. And it just makes you feel and look better when you wear your button down shirts. Couldn't find it. Looked all over, every mall in San Diego. And we ended up going to the garment district in downtown Los Angeles and bought some fabric and took that fabric to a dry cleaners in San Diego and said, can you make 2 shirts? And I drew a sketch with my second grade art skills, measured out what I thought were the measurements. And she's like, why would you make an undershirt that long? And I was like, I'm really particular. And this shows the listeners how much I knew about it. But she said, do you have ribbing? And ribbing is a material on the collar. And I was like, no, I don't have that. Where do I get it? And there was a Joann's down the street. And the only ribbing they had was Donald Duck character prints repeating around it. So the very first undershirts have Donald Duck characters on them. But I just wanted to see if the idea worked, Jordan. It's $100 to buy fabric and have them made. And it did. Once I got it, it did everything I hoped it would do. And I was like, man, I'm going to send these out to friends of mine and see if they have the same feeling I had when I tried it on. Sent them out. They all called me back a week later and they said, Tom, if you ever make more of these, I'll buy them from you. So I went back up to downtown Los Angeles, garment district, and convinced somebody to connect me to a manufacturer. And we ended up making 200 undershirts, built a 2-page PayPal checkout website in April 2008. And we were launched 70% perfect, no business plan, no fit model, just threw it on and thought it fit pretty well on me. And, I think for us, we didn't know what we didn't know. We had no experience in the fashion industry. We had no connections, but I wanted to solve a problem that was personal to me. And I understood and learned that any man that wears an undershirt, we solved a problem that they didn't know they had yet. And it really led to this problem solving approach to, man, my underwear ride up. What if you make underwear that doesn't ride up your legs? Then you don't get wedgies. We have a no wedgie guarantee. That makes sense. That's a claim that we can stand behind. So we've had a lot of fun as we've grown over time. But that was really the origin story with the brand name and how we got started.
Well, it's such a cool origin story, man, that you got to do that with your wife. I have a question I have to ask you. Do you still have the original Donald Duck? Like, is that still available? Do you still have that?
No, we can't find it. We've looked and looked. If someone finds it, maybe we'll pop up on eBay someday. I don't know, but we haven't found it.
Gonna auction that thing off for charity, man. That's amazing. What a cool moment. Yeah, I love your humility, man, and how you share, and just the simple truths of like what it took to build a business. What would you say to the young entrepreneur listening? Like, if there were some key things that you learned in your journey, Tom, maybe some challenges you had to overcome or some new ways of thinking, what advice would you give to the young entrepreneur listening that wants to be the next Tom or Aaron in their journey?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's just being authentic. There's a lot of business ideas, and I think what makes ours unique is we didn't say, hey, this is a market that's ripe for disruption. Let's create a product and a business plan around it because it can be disrupted. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's been amazing businesses built that way. What makes ours different is it came from a pain point that I had, and I solved a problem that I had that was personal to me. And I think when that's the case, there's just a passion and an authenticity that's unique and different. And we just wanted to make the best. We wanted to build a brand where the greats tried to imitate us, and they looked at us as the market leaders. And I think, we were okay taking those risks. And, for those that are listening, this was back in like 2008, right? So started Tommy John, started getting into men's specialty stores I would sell into on the weekends. The first 2 said no, couldn't get into any stores. They're like, we don't need a long undershirt like that. Nobody's going to wear it. And I finally figured out how to put them on consignment. I trained the salespeople, came back a week later, and they paid me for what sold. And that really allowed us to gain momentum. And then I was laid off my sales job in 2008, selling medical devices. And if you remember, that's when the housing market crashed, the financial crisis followed, and the retail recession or slowdown followed. I was laid off my job, and I read this article that there's no better time to start a company than during a recession. And my thought process was, I wasn't married yet. I didn't have any kids. If this doesn't work, I could still go back to medical sales. I liked it. I wouldn't say I loved it and thought it was my lifelong career. So I cashed out my 401k, my savings. I used my friends at American Express, Visa, and MasterCard to finance a lot of it. And, burn the boats. There was no plan B because I knew if there was a plan B would be plan B. And I just went all in. And I think there's something when you kind of put your toes in the water. And for me, losing my medical sales job was the best thing that ever happened because it really, this is it. Like, let's go. This is the moment. And I didn't want to be this coulda, woulda, shoulda guy. I didn't want to look back 10 years from now and say, I had that idea. I should have done it. Look what that business has become. I wanted us to do that and build that business. And I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs or people with ideas get caught up because everybody has $1 million idea. The hardest part is getting started and being able to see that nudge. And for me, I call it fate. I think somebody created that opportunity, made me read that article in the news at the time. And I kind of read through and processed it. And I just like, this is the time. This is the time to go. And a lot of people will say, oh, you're so fearless or you're a risk taker. I don't think so. I think I knew the risks. I understood it going in. So I think when you're intentful about it, it's different versus just flying by the seat of your pants.
Well, two things that marked your story for sure. One was a willingness to be different. So I'd love for you to talk about what you saw in the marketplace, that there were, mostly kind of black and white undershirts, but you saw an opportunity to do something different. And then number two was the way that you pursued mentors. And you've got this board member who I think is still a mentor today, guy by the name of Dana. It's a really cool story of how you tracked Dana down. Would you mind talking about just those two things? It's the willingness to be different as a young entrepreneur and see an opportunity, but also what mentorship has meant to you in your journey.
Man, it's been huge. I grew up playing sports like any small town kid, and you learn so much through failing, right? And I think you get used to being comfortable in sports, failing, improving. And, I think having coaches push you and learning how to work with the teams is really important as far as building that competitive drive. But when we started, we're going against Calvin Klein, Jockey, Hugo Boss, Under Armour, big $1 billion brands. And people are like, oh, the baseball pitcher started an underwear brand. Huh. And I recognized a few things. When we looked at the category for underwear and undershirts in a retail environment, 65% of men's underwear and undershirts were bought by women in 2008. And all of the packaging in stores was black and white colors. So we did this survey and we learned that women made up the majority of purchases, and women also really liked Tiffany's jewelry and chocolate. So our first packaging had chocolate and blue color palette and a good looking guy on it. So we stood out, we popped, like we fired like a diamond amongst all of our competitors, and people gravitated towards it. And then when they opened up the box, they touched and felt it, and they really understood how luxurious the product was. And so that was one. And the other thing is my background in medical sales training nurses and doctors on pulse oximetry sensors, it transitioned really well into training salespeople in a retail store environment. So as an example, I got thrown into the fire. My first, so I went to a trade show, a speaking event, and I met this guy talking about cash flow, creating product knowledge, P&L, balance sheet, financial analysis and modeling for retail businesses. And he had been a consultant in the footwear industry. His name's Dana Freed. Dana is one of our best personal friends. He's been on our board for 13 years. But he wouldn't work with me because we couldn't afford him. And I said, man, just take the shirt back, try it on. And if you still think that's the case tomorrow, you don't have to work with me. But if you do, I think I can learn so much from you. And he tried it on, he came back, he said, you have something here. Let's find a way to work together. And that was 2 months before we launched into Neiman Marcus. So what I'm getting at is he kind of pushed me, go to the stores, tell your story, spend time on the floor with the salespeople, talk to customers. And John Maxwell talks a lot about this. A lot of times the answers are in the actions. And for me, being in the store, talking to salespeople, the first time I went, it's like 8:30 in the morning before the store opens, and the store manager in Scottsdale, Neiman Marcus, said, all right, Tom, we're going to have you come speak. front of like 300 people, tell them about your brand, what you do, why you're here. And I was not prepared at all. But what I found is that rarely happens. And it was a memorable experience to have the founder or co-founder of a company there, spending time with them on the floor, talking to customers. And man, it was like an MBA in learning the ways to sell our product. And what happened is one guy tried on the undershirt, and he's like, all right, I'll take 36 of them. And that really just opened up in my mind. I was like, wow, this can be a lot bigger than I anticipated, but trying is buying. And what we found is if we could get people into our product and to try it on, the light bulb went off. And that's really when we started gaining momentum in our business. So it was one, finding a mentor, listening to him, being coachable, which I got through sports, being coachable, and just having that growth mindset and willing to do the things most people aren't willing to do. It's one thing to sell into a store and hope and pray, but you have to sell in, but also sell through. So I went to 90 stores over the next 18 months between Barkus and Nordstrom, sleeping on friends' couches, renting cars. So Friday through Sunday, I would be in Chicago, Miami, Dallas, and then Monday through Thursday, we would be in Los Angeles. And what we would do in Los Angeles, we would fold shirts, we would punch the hang tags, we would put the UPC stickers on the boxes, which we assembled ourselves in the factory. But what was really cool is we learned everything from start to finish, like manufacturing the product, the hang tags. Creating a UPC sticker and getting UPC numbers is actually really complicated. Because we didn't come from this industry, but you know what? We just kind of said, all right, we don't know, but we'll figure it out. And I think a lot of being an entrepreneur is it's not knowing the answers, it's knowing where to find the answers. And I think we've always been able to find the right people to help us and ask the right questions just because we're curious and we wanted it.
Well, I commend you and Aaron both on just your grind and the way that you took chances and stepped out in faith. You know, I believe it's Andy Stanley who said, if you want to have influence others don't have, you have to do things that others don't do. And that's been your story. But you've also had challenge, and I love how you talk about challenge. I want our audience to know this. I asked you offline, like, hey, before we start our conversation today, Tom, like, is there anything that you want to speak to that you want people to hear or know about? And you said, man, I'd love just to encourage some entrepreneurs or business people that have been struggling over the last 2-3 years. And so I would just love to give you the opportunity to do that. Like, I know that these last 3 years for a lot of people in business post-pandemic has created maybe some interesting logistical challenges or even emotional challenges. So what are you learning post-pandemic, and what would you like to teach other entrepreneurs or business people about surviving through challenge?
Yeah, glad to at least give my perspective. So, you know, we were at Elevation Worship at Elevation Church in Charlotte a couple weeks ago, and we were able to see Stephen Furtick preach, and he was preaching about a lot of times what happens suddenly is based on what you were doing consistently, right? Oh, you're suddenly everywhere. You're this huge business, and it's taken us 15 years to be an overnight success. And I think recognizing what happens suddenly is done consistently. And you talk about that grind and just working and working and working and making the extra call, staying the extra hour, asking the extra question. There's a stacking that goes along with it. And it puts you in a position to kind of find luck is the way that we look at it. And I think, you know, what we've learned as leaders, and we've certainly made our mistakes. This is our first business, right? We're first-time entrepreneurs in a lot of ways. But I think we've been fortunate to surround ourselves with great leaders who can mentor and guide us if we're having challenges. And I think the worst thing any leader or entrepreneur can do is be by themselves. It's really lonely being at the top. And, you know, while pressure is a privilege, there's tough decisions to be made. And I think what we found, and I think what we always keep going back to is a lot of times your intuition is a sign, right? I think 9 out of 10 times your gut is right, and it comes through experience and kind of listening and learning. But I think today, you know, there's so many distractions in the world with news, social media. As a company gets bigger, David Green talks about this, like, keep the main thing the main thing.
Mm.
right? And at the end of the day, our main thing is we want to make the world more comfortable through better fitting underwear, undershirts, t-shirts, bras, right? The basics. And um, it's easy to get distracted by getting into other categories or competing with other brands. But what really makes us great is the categories I just talked to. And I think having that maniacal focus is a really important thing
Mm.
of anybody, and just being decisive. I think a lot of times when we've slowed down our business, it's been taking too long. And even if you're wrong, you just got to decide and go sometimes. And the last thing I would say is we started with this 70% perfect mentality. And I think a lot of times as
Mm.
companies get bigger, you tend to maybe play not to lose versus playing to win. And no one wants to make mistakes at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I get that. But a lot of times, you learn so much through the mistakes. Like we've not done this perfectly, but we've been able to learn, pick up and move on. And I think there's something about just getting started and deciding and iterating
Mm.
versus perfecting and over perfecting, because it can take 6 to 24 months to get to the perfect version, but you may have missed out on your opportunity by then. So Aaron and I are a good balance is, I'll jump off the cliff and build the plane on the way down. She'll look over the cliff a little bit longer, build maybe the wheels and the wings and have a little smoother landing, and I'll make it, but maybe I'm scratched up a little bit more. So it's been a good balance for us. And I think just feel really blessed to have had a partner that's everybody has blind spots. And I think
Mm.
knowing each other's blind spots and finding people that recognize your blind spots, there's a reason why some brands and businesses succeed and some don't. And I think a lot
Mm.
of it is to what we've been talking about, at least from our experience.
Man, I love so much what you said about 70% perfect. That's so good. The 70% perfect mentality. I want to make sure everybody caught that. That is gold. Um, and also, I want you to repeat what you said. This quote, I think it maybe came from Stephen Furtick, but what happened suddenly happened after. Say this again. This was so good. I want to make sure everybody
Yeah,
catches this.
I'm probably going to butcher it. What happens suddenly is because of what you do consistently.
So good. What happens suddenly is because of what you do consistently. So this idea, there's long obedience in the same direction. You said it took you 15 years to become an overnight success. Um, hey, I would love to, as we sort of land the plane on today's conversation, man, I want to talk about things that are more important to you than even Tommy John and this business that you built. And I know this business is so important to you. In fact, I once heard you say that you and Aaron treated Tommy John like it was your first child. Like you really have stewarded this opportunity so well. One of the reasons you've been successful, I believe, that you and Aaron have had favor and created so much impact is because of your humility, which I think really comes from your faith. And I want our listeners to hear this. Two things. One is, Tom, you have jumped at the opportunity to get to know people and to serve. Like you've got this really big Tommy John presence and company. Yet, if you meet Tom Patterson, it's just like the neighbor down the street. Like there's just no bravado, there's no pretense. I just love that about who you are. And the other thing is, again, offline, we're talking about the conversation we're going to have today. And you're like, man, I just want to inspire one person. Like that's my goal. I asked like, how do I set you up for success? Is there anything you want to talk about? You're like, just want to inspire one person. And then I think you said that again, maybe even 20 minutes ago. So, but talk about how has faith shaped your life and even this journey with Tommy John? What's God teaching you and what's he revealed to you with all the success that you've had and the opportunities you've been blessed with?
I've never been asked it in this way. I'll take a crack at it. I think God fills the gaps for you when you don't know how to fill the gaps. And there's no way we're here today without him and his blessing and his protection of us in the business for sure. And I would say, my grandpa was a big part of my life. And what I learned from my grandpa is to treat everybody the same, whether it's the person at the cash register, the front desk receptionist, the VP of sales, or the CEO or founders. And a lot of it, like, that's how Jesus treated everybody.
Mm.
treated everybody the same. There was no, they're so-and-so, they're this, they've done that. And I think we'd be naive to the fact that Tommy John hasn't opened up doors for us and got us in a lot of incredible rooms that we're just blown away that we're in, and people we've met and to be around. And it's really humbling to be around those people. And John Gordon, who we both love, talks a lot about this, like iron sharpens iron. And man, I feel really dull going into a lot of these meetings and rooms I've been a part of, and I always feel a little sharper. And I think that constant just pushing yourself and being around greatness is something that, or what I perceive to be great people, it creates that humility. But I think the common theme with anybody that has humility is they've gone through tough times, and there's been this resilience that's been built through their experiences. And I think, one thing I didn't grow up in an environment where I went to the right school. I had the network to get the right internship, the perfect opportunity, and build like the perfect resume. And I think there's something to be said. And I was thinking about this the other day, working at a coffee shop, working at a restaurant, having people not treat you very nicely. There are these character building internships or jobs where you have an hourly wage that shape how you look at things, and appreciate where you're at in hindsight. For example, one of the hardest jobs I ever had is I was a log peeler in the summer of 1999 in my hometown. This guy built log homes, and you sit on these 40-foot logs with a V-shaped draw knife, and you literally peel back bark off a log, and it paid $1.25 a foot. So I'd like knock out 200 feet by 12 o'clock, be exhausted, and I'd make twice as much money as my friends. I mean, I was jacked that summer because of all the work, but the guy thought I'd be done after a day. He said most people quit after half a day. But I think what it kind of created is this grit, but it also made me realize the importance of wanting to get an education and wanting to do other things. I liked the physical labor part of it, but it made me clear on what I didn't want to do. And I think having jobs that you don't want to do, there's just a character and a resilience and a commitment that people build that you could argue has maybe been lost with other generations, and not to say our way is the own way. But I think there is something about just tough times and character lead to resilience, and resilience leads to humility and humbleness. And I'm sure we have our moments where we aren't humble, but yeah, I think that from our experience, I think that's how we look at it.
Man, I love how you unpacked that. I think most people who have a story like yours are quick to reflect on where they started. And I'm just even thinking about our story. Like, I was a garbage man. Like I was 18 years old and I was going to go work for the city. And I remember going home and telling my dad, like, well, they didn't have a spot in the parks department. I thought I was going to mow lawns, like take my shirt off, get a tan. Like I'm 19. I'm like, just easy street, mowing lawns all summer. And the city manager said, well, the parks department is full, but we have a spot in refuse. And I didn't know what refuse was. And I was like, sure, I'm in, I was going to work for this guy. He's like, great. Well, your partner, that's Mark, your partner, and that's your truck. And you're going to need to get a CDL. And I remember just thinking, like, that's a garbage truck. And I went home and told my dad, I'm like this refuse thing, I think he wants me to do garbage. Like, I'm not going to do that. And my dad's like, yeah, you're going to do that. Like, you committed to work for Rodney for the summer. And I think, yeah, I should be really good for you. And I just think back to that experience of throwing garbage, the people I was exposed to, there was just something humbling about that summer hanging off the back of a garbage truck that I'll just never forget. And yeah, man, I love that you're quick to draw attention to that. I think more people need to, wait tables, pull back bark, throw some garbage. There's some really cool transformative stuff that happens, when you have a willingness to do that work. Is there something more that you wanted to say about that, Tom?
Oh no, I mean, I just love hearing that about you. I think everybody, well, not everybody, a lot of people have that story, but I would just say that the jobs I got paid the least in are the ones that I learned the most in hindsight.
Good.
So I think there's this preparation for where you're going to go and how you kind of find what you're ultimately going to do that's being built, and people are impatient and they give up or they switch careers or do things too quickly. And I think there's just a lot of impatience today with social media and comparison where it's tough. I mean, I think everybody falls into that, but there's something about things that are built and experiences that, I'm very appreciative now in hindsight.
Man, I'll share this too. That this, as you're sharing, like doing, there's I think activities, there's things that we're all called to, or there's things that we get to do that are really, really good for us that I think sometimes we stop doing. One of those things for me, Tom, has been mowing my lawn. And this is going to sound sad, and I'm going to sound like, yeah, I don't even like how this comes out, like that I have to articulate it this way, but I've been taking some flack over the past few years because I still mow my own lawn. And we're fortunate that we live in a neighborhood where a lot of people aren't doing that for whatever reason, right? They don't have time, or they want it to look a certain way, or I don't know. I've just always done that. And I've started to get some flack, and I'm like, man, how sad is this? This is like a routine thing. Like, first off, many Americans don't even have a lawn that they get to mow. Like, I get to mow mine. I get to take care of it and steward that gift that God gave me. And I want to give my friend Ryan Leake a shout out because I'm on my lawnmower the other day. Like, I'm getting ready to mow the lawn, and so he calls like he often does just to check in. And he's like, "What are you doing, man?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm actually getting ready to mow my lawn." And Ryan said the opposite thing to me that so many of my friends have said. He's like, "Hey, man, I just want to encourage you in that. Like, keep mowing your lawn." And I kind of laugh, and I'm like, "Dude, all my friends are telling me like, hey, you should hire this out or get somebody else to do it. Like, why are you still doing that? It takes a lot of time." He's like, "Nah, man, there's just something really good for you. Like, there's something humbling, like doing that work, like taking care of a gift, stewarding a gift that God gave you, not being too good for that." And so I don't know what that is for our listeners. It might not be mowing your lawn. It might be something else that you do. There might be a duty or a task that you complete that seems trivial. And man, it just makes me feel, I feel privileged, like sharing that, Tom. Like, I hate that I have to like view it as something, like noble that I get to, it's not, but what is that thing for you? Like when you think about, cause you have this humble spirit, man. And you and Aaron, I know that you want to be good stewards. Like how are you working on, just staying grounded? What does that look like for you?
I'm not mowing the lawn. I have to admit that. Like you are.
That's good, dude.
Yeah.
All good.
I think there's something about, as life gets comfortable, people lose the desire to be uncomfortable. Right. And it's one of our the thing that we talk about a lot at Tommy John is be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Doing things differently, thinking differently. The great businesses or the great brands make uncomfortable decisions. And so for me, it's like, I would say it's small wins, whether it's getting up and getting some steps in walking, doing my morning prayer walk. It could be jumping in an ice bath, which is 3 minutes of like the worst thing in the world, especially when it's 30 below and outside in South Dakota. But there is something about, I think it like resets you or recalibrates you to remind you of what you have. It kind of like gets you into it like activates gratefulness in a lot of ways. Like, for example, I sit in my ice bath and I look around, I'm like, wow, look at this bike I have, the Yeti cooler. We have 2 cars. Like we have a heated garage. But I'm sitting in a 35-degree ice bath. What's wrong with me? There's these things that kind of force you into that. And for me, it's mowing. But I think a lot of times like, oh, I've earned the right not to mow my lawn anymore. I've earned the right to outsource it. And I think there's like something to be learned for people that are still doing that. And, for me, I'm getting to that age now where my kids are probably going to, they don't do what you say, they do what you do. And I think just reminding myself that they watch your actions, that having them shovel the snow with me versus doing the snowblower, having them do hard things is, I think, an important part of just that, the resilience and the humility and the character that it builds, because the world's become really comfortable. Everything can be turned on with your Wi-Fi app.
That's it.
Temperature control, automation. And I think there's a lot to be said. And the last thing I'll say is like my aunt and uncle, they live in a 3-story house. They're in their late 70s. They go up and down these steep stairs, bringing laundry up and down. they don't have any health problems compared to a lot of their friends. And I think there's something to lifting 20 pounds of laundry, going up 2 flights when you're 78 years old, folding your own laundry. There's really something to be learned there. So I kind of look for patterns with that, like you. And I think it's probably why we could talk about this for another hour.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, I think about the scripture, Luke 12:48, right? It says, to whom's been given much, much will be asked. To whom's been entrusted with much, much more will be required. And so again, man, just in closing, I want to say that you've been an inspiration to me because of how you and Aaron have stewarded that of which God has entrusted you with. And I think your journey's just begun, man. I think about the way that you operate, the way that you treat people, the way that you show up, and the various conversations that I've seen you be a part of. In fact, I'll just say this. I was going to say this to you after the conversation. I'll just say this here. We're recording. I had this experience with you in Orlando, and I haven't told you this yet. So it was like the final day. It was actually when Sean McDermott was getting ready to talk. We were grabbing lunch, and I really wanted to be like I remember thinking, man, I really want to connect with Tom. So I'm gonna sit at Tom's table. I'm gonna sit next to Tom. And you were, I think, going to sit at one table, and then you sat at another table with some guys, probably the guys who were like the youngest or least experienced. I just remember thinking like, wow, that's interesting. Like Tom chose to sit at this table, and I was kind of trying to sit at the table that you were at with some of the other, kind of high level leaders. Man, that is that's a microcosm of who you are. I noticed that, and maybe it was just like whatever, the seat was open, and the other thing I remember thinking is like, well, I just want to sit at Tom's table, man. I want to be a part of your orbit, your world. I want to get more time with you. I'm just better. I get better being around you. But I remembered that small decision you made. Maybe that was a happy accident, but I just remember thinking, man, there's something about that guy. There's a humility in him that I find really attractive, that I want to be around and that I want more of. So yeah, just wanted to encourage you with that story. And I think God's best for you and Aaron is ahead.
Man, thanks so much. I don't remember that specifically, but
you're probably like, well, dude, there was just a seat open, and actually, like that spot was messy, so I chose a different table. I don't know,
but anyway, because I didn't want to sit with you by any means. I wanted to sit next to you. But no, same with you. We talked about this, the platform, what you're doing, the encouragement, what you see in people, like your gift is your gift. Like I'm a part of it right now, being able to be on the show and see what you do and the value you add to listeners. And that's just the one thing the listeners have today that I don't think you and I had, is all the knowledge from all these leaders and the humility that they share can be listened to on podcasts, in your car, on YouTube. I mean, dude, I mowed lawns with a CD Walkman that skipped all the time. I would have given my left finger to have podcasts to listen to mowing lawns. I would have mowed a lot more lawns longer into the night.
Yes.
Be mowing like that, hoping it doesn't, you know what I'm talking about. So, but yeah, thanks so much for having me on. Anything I can do for you anytime, you know where to get me.
Well, man, I'm always in your corner. Wishing you and Aaron the very best. And I just want to say thanks for investing an hour of your really valuable time with me and with our audience. So appreciate you, brother. Always behind you. Thanks for being here.
Appreciate you, man.
This has been another episode of the Growth Over Goals podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Montgomery. We want to say thanks to Tom Patterson for investing your valuable time and energy with our community. Also want to issue a thank you to John Choate and James Roth of Storyline Multimedia for all the work that they do behind the scenes to make these podcast episodes go. Finally, if you found value in today's show, would you please share, rate, or subscribe to this podcast in an effort that we might move our mission of impact forward to reach more people. Be well, be great, have a wonderful day.